Let's go!
Let's talk about pricing. So the Switch 2 got revealed, and the Switch 2, I would argue the price of the hardware is moderately priced. We had a gift sub bet that the Switch 2 was going to be $399. To me, that was pretty much the lowest in my brain they could possibly make that system cost. 400 felt like about right the modern day, especially considering the Switch OLED was teetering on like 350. So it's like, yeah, them being 450 in my eyes was like, damn, that is not much more than I thought it was going to be, because in my head, I'm like, my dude, are we really getting a Nintendo console that's going to be $500? 450 is legit not bad. That is not the problem, though. We're now at a point where we're wishing the system costs $500. That Nintendo would charge us $500, maybe even $550, because now they are pretty much saying that first-party Nintendo games, and we're going to leave it up to devs, get to choose how much their games cost. Standardized pricing is out the window. Mario Kart is $80 to $90, depending on your region. Donkey Kong is a $70 game, which matches up with some other first-party games on the Switch. So it's like, wait, what? Mario Kart is a super expensive game. They're anticipating people are going to be buying the bundle, almost forcing people to have to get the digital bundle. But it sets a precedent that has been obviously changing over this console generation and has been teased several points from bigger developers. We all know the biggest looming question is that I think we've almost accepted this, and I'm not a big GTA fan, but I feel like Grand Theft Auto fans are already sitting in a moment of presumption that GTA is going to cost $99.99. That game's going to come out and it's going to cost you $100. And the crazy part is that because it's such an anticipated game, that is just accepted. Everyone wants it so much that it's practically a thing that people are just like, yeah, so that's pretty much what's happening. Okay. And to me, it's like, as somebody that's not a GTA fan, I'm like, no, that's kind of wild. That's very different than the way this entire industry has been leading up to that point, if that's like a culturally accepted thing. So now we get new Nintendo hardware. Their hero game for the system costs $80, and it's a concept that they can overall price their games if need be, which is scary. And why is it scary? Because we are now retreading a very similar thing that Nintendo and other consoles went through back in the day. I have to also have a reminder. It seemed like Sony was kind of the ones that were going to prop up the fact that, hey, PS4 games, you know, like how about PS4 games and beyond are $59.99? How about them being like $60? Now that we're on like PlayStation and PS5 and stuff, we've sort of been acclimated to the idea that, okay, so maybe games are like $69.99 every once in a while now. Maybe some big games are actually kind of expensive when they come out. Nintendo also kind of followed suit with a lot of first-party games on the Nintendo Switch. So now it's being bumped up a little bit more. $10 increments every single time. A reminder, in the early 90s, the entire reason we had standardized pricing for games was because of the PlayStation 1, was because Sony chose to print their games on extremely cheap CDs, and they were being competitive in the market. They were trying to get a leg up in the market against Sega, against Nintendo, do something that didn't use cartridge technology that they had to spend a whole bunch of money on and pay Nintendo and pay Sega to like print games on these cartridges and shit, which were ballooning game prices. Sony was like, what if we just buy general CDs? Because they're cheap. And all of a sudden, games were $49.99, period. Games would be cheaper than that. Greatest hits games for PS1 games could sometimes be $19.99. That was the change in the industry. And from that point forward, for like nearly 15 years, games were $50 because most of them were CD based, you know? That has been the standard that the majority of time in the industry we have been privy to. We were sort of in this moment where like, yeah, video games cost $50, and that feels about right. That feels good. I want to remind everyone what this shit was like in the SNES and the Genesis era. I pre-ordered Killer Instinct for my Super Nintendo when it came out. That bitch ass game on the receipt was $95. And we got to pull up some examples. We're gonna take you back to the ass when games used to cost a shit ton of money. Here is an idea of somewhat standardization happening. PlayStation games are right around the $50 mark. Depending on where you buy them at Toys R Us, they sometimes would mark up. Some places would not, some places would. But if we look over here on the N64, games are at the PlayStation 4 generation of pricing for the majority of first-party games, and it's all over the place, man. 65, 60. If games had a license in some way, my dude, they were costing $70. Let's go back a little bit more. Super Nintendo, yeah. Hey, you know what? I'm a Capcom fan. Duh. I'm a guy that likes arcade games. I want to get my arcade experience at home, and I want to experience the arcade. That will cost you a premium for some reason. If you want an arcade game to be ported, there was just a premium attached to it. The latest version of NBA Jam is going to rock you $70 at launch. UMK3, that's an arcade game, $70 at launch. Alpha 2, $70. And then you get some like moderately priced games here and there. Even first party games are closer to the 50, but holy shit, man, this was crazy. Like games were costing, the console was only 130. This is like competitive, right? This is normal. My dude, a $70 game in like 1995 is like $800 now or some shit. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but what? It's not that far off. Yeah, okay. Ah! This was me. My N64, when I eventually got one from a friend, had one fucking game because I couldn't afford anything, dude. It's $80 for KI. This was the exact same on SNES as well, right? Shadows of the Empire, $80. Like, holy mother of God, dude. Here's the good one. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. Dude, Donkey Kong Country 2 was only $79.48. Killer Instinct was one of the most anticipated arcade games to ever show up on a piece of hardware. They were promising the world, you are getting the arcade experience at home. Are you ready to pay for it? It was $90. And I'm telling you, like my mom bought this shit for me. It cost $95 when it was rung up. It is crazy. Game prices were out of control back in the 90s. They were out of control until PlayStation came around. And then after this, N64 games got a little bit cheaper, and then GameCube games were all $50, you know? $262 with inflation? Holy shit, dude. And people are like, what are these weird prices? This was normal. This was just how shit went. Some games were way more expensive. Some games wouldn't. Some games weren't. And you go back here and you look. I remember, yeah, Final Fantasy, dude, Chrono Trigger was like $75. So hilariously expensive back in the day. Like Square Enix RPGs really were like trying to ream you. KI would have cost us $180 if we calculate the money today. I'm not saying this is an excuse. Buy the Nintendo GameCube for $99.99 and we'll throw in Mario Kart for free. There's a reason for this. The PlayStation needed to make $50 games because they had to make their games cheaper. Had to create a piece of hardware that was CD based and CD focused, and we need to make sure that we have a leg up on our competitors in some way. Sega wasn't as much of a competitor at the time, but they needed to do something with the PlayStation 1 to bring people on board because they were weird, man. Sony making a system was a weird concept. So having their games be relatively cheaper, and especially cheaper when they were used, was a big deal. That was a big deal for people to eventually jump into a PlayStation. Why is this way as well? A friendly reminder, the N64 tanked. It did fairly well over here in the Americas, but in the rest of the world, this system bombed. People were not exactly ready for a 4-player local like home multiplayer kind of system where it focuses on that. It was not particularly the most well-received hardware, even though it feels like it kind of was now because we're from America. So what happened to the GameCube? The GameCube had to be competitive. They did mini discs. Every price of the game went down at least $10. The system, they were throwing in games that you could get with the system. Like deals like this were happening constantly. The GameCube was significantly cheaper than almost any other like launch system that Nintendo had done at the time, if not comparable graphically even to what Xbox and PlayStation were doing. So they were having to be competitive. Games don't have to be competitive anymore, my dude. Things just keep getting more expensive. They sold like 60 million copies of Animal Crossing or some shit, man. They sold like 80 million copies of Mario Kart. The Nintendo's doing better than they ever have. There's some shit going down at Sony right now, but relatively speaking, the PlayStation 5 is selling even better than the PlayStation 4 at this point. Xbox, let's not talk about it. But still, the game industry, people are willing to spend like more money on games. Just like in general, it's almost like it's a commodity. They're almost expecting that, hey, if you're really looking forward to this, we can charge more for it because you can't not buy it. right? In the same way, at this point, Smash Brothers could cost $90. If they made a brand new Smash Brothers and it severely increases everything that the previous game had, and it's like a big deal, I could see them like straight up charging you $90 because it's like the most characters. We have the most premium, highest roster like fighting game. What's happening is that in my brain, I can see their justification. We have characters from all these other franchises. We're doing this, we're doing that. This has more stages. Like, it's such a big game. We can't believe how much we fit in here. So for that, we're going to charge you $89.99. Like, that is where my brain is going and their justification of this being a thing. It sucks. And it's clear right now people have less money than they ever have. It's clear that a lot of people are feeling gouged in every single way. And we're not even going through the current global economic crisis that could be visiting us in the next few weeks. That has not even happened yet. So we don't even know the impact of that in the near future because the majority of where these things are printed and where they come from, at least from a hardware perspective, are coming from the places that will be impacted 100%. All I got to say is that it's bizarre that we are retreading. It's bizarre that things are sort of going back to the old school super capitalist, like, hey, you know, you like arcade games, right? Well, we know how much you like arcade game ports. And guess what? The people that like arcade games always buy this shit. So we can just make them cost more and more and more. And now it feels like that's directly happening with, I would argue, Mario Kart. Because I proposed an idea at the start of this that, like, you can charge us $500 for the Switch 2. You could charge us $550 for the Switch 2. If it meant that the games were standardized. If the games stay at 60, if they stayed there, we will be spending less money over time. What they're doing is trying to make the console affordable so that you're going to be spending way more money over time. Way more money, because you're not going to not have a Zelda. You're not going to have the new 3D Mario. You're not going to not have a Mario Kart. You're not going to not have a new Metroid or whatever. You're going to need to get those things, you know? So as soon as you've bought 4 games, my dude, you're getting close to like having spent the money you would have already spent on a more expensive system. And that's only like 3 or 4 games in. They're going for the long haul. Is what they're doing. It's like simple business economics. They're going for the long haul. There's almost like treating it like a subscription service where they slowly increase the price like over time and shit. You need these games, right? It is the most, and I am not even freaking talking about the goddamn upgrade shit, which sometimes feel like, okay, yeah, that upgrade seems pretty substantial. But some of them I was like, that better be really good, because that doesn't look particularly amazing for you to like charge something like 20 to 30 bucks per game again for something that like maybe you already have. Like, what is going on, dude? And it was already very weird because they were not immediately willing to talk about pricing, which was bizarre. That's like why we're here, is to find out what you're putting out and what it's going to cost. To me, it's a presumption that you're going to buy it anyway. Oh, we're still going to sell out though. What does it cost though? Don't worry about that. You'll find out soon. What do you mean? Oh, the games are 80 bucks? Like, what the shit? All I'm saying is that it's very weird. And all I'm saying, it is bizarre as shit that we're going back to SNES era game pricing. And I don't think every game is going to be the standard 80 bucks. I think Donkey Kong is 70, but the door has now officially been opened. We thought GTA 6 was going to be the thing that would pretty much like knock the door down and be like, well, here we are. That was not the case. It, believe it or not, was Nintendo with Switch games, with Switch 2 games, and nobody's happy.